Hello, I'm Mark Tucker.
Hey, I'm Alan Furstenberg. We are Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Hey, Alan.
Hey, Mark. What's up?
More fun in the world of AI.
As there's always more fun in the world of AI.
I was looking at some recent announcements last week on something called Agent Skills, and I thought we could talk about it today and kind of just dive in, give like a broad overview, some simple examples, just get somebody from zero to something.
Sounds reasonable.
This is kind of to talk about context. We're in the mode of we're a developer. We're using our IDE and some sort of Copilot or CLI that's agent based that's going to help us. We're talking about Cloud Code. We're talking about Gemini CLI. We're talking about GitHub Copilot. Many others that you could
Right.
choose. And behind the scenes, what you type in gets sent to an LLM. The LLM processes it and gets a response. Then there's some plugins into the IDE itself, so it can read code, it can write code. But in the end, it's really an LLM that has some context that gets a prompt and then does something with the response.
Now these plugins, they're just defined tools. I mean, for those we've been talking about tools now for a couple of years.
Yep.
So fundamentally, they're just defined tools. I think the big difference is that these are tools that are doing things in some cases. So, like, I know the Gemini CLI, for example, has a tool that will write stuff to a file. It has tools to read files, of course, but the writing stuff to a file is kind of the big deal.
Yeah. So I work mostly in GitHub Copilot, and you do what? Gemini
Gemini CLI mostly.
CLI. Okay.
Yeah.
So before we jump into agent skills, there's a couple of ways of getting information into the context that, besides what the prompt is that you type, whether it's a question or an instruction to create a file or implement some code or whatever. Besides that prompt, there are various ways of getting additional information into that context. On the GitHub Copilot side, you can have a subdirectory, a GitHub directory, and inside of that directory, it could have a Copilot instructions markdown file. And inside of that, you could, do a bigger prompt. You don't have to use that. You could type that whole thing out yourself into the prompt, right? But if it's something that's reusable or something that's consistent across multiple files or the repository itself, then it might make sense to put that into a separate instructions file. So what's
Sure.
that on the Gemini side?
So on the Gemini side, the same sort of thing is in a Gemini.md file. I believe Claude uses Claude.md or something like that. I think the what and tell me if this is true on other ones. I'm reasonably sure it is, but I know at least on Gemini, one of the features that I like is that I can have a Gemini MD for the specific project that I'm working on. As an example, I use Gemini CLI to help create the thumbnails and the descriptions for this podcast. So every week after I'm done producing the video and the audio, I feed that into Gemini with a set of instructions. And that set of instructions is the same every week. But that's a local project level. In my programming side, I've got Gemini MDs that are very specific to whatever that task is. But I also have a Gemini MD set up basically in my home directory that gives specifications for what tools are available. So, if I know that I use FFmpeg for a number of different projects, I have that specified at a higher level than I do the lower level ones. And it kind of merges everything from the current project I'm in all the way up to my home directory. It merges them into one set of system instructions. So I can, have very general instructions for all of my interactions, like, make sure you're friendly or talk like a pirate to me all the time because
Yep,
that's what I like
you love
or
that.
whatever. and then for my specific project, have details about that project.
Yeah, I think other co-pilots, I don't know, are they termed generically co-pilots or
No,
they're not?
nobody else calls them a
Uh,
Copilot except for Microsoft.
all right. Well, that's the way it goes.
I believe everyone's calling them personal agents or command line agents, or I don't know. I don't think we've adopted a term yet.
All right. So in essence, that instructions file is kind of like a system prompt. It's always included when the agent is calling the LLM to do things, and then whatever you type in the prompt is kind of like the user prompt.
Right.
Right. Right. So yeah, I don't know specifically on GitHub if it does that inherited, but I wouldn't doubt if it had. I just haven't hit that situation. But it's important to know that that instructions file is always included in the context. It doesn't matter specifically what you're doing. It's not necessarily something that you have to worry about. It's just always going to be included.
Right.
Okay, so that's kind of the first hurdle that I had to kind of overcome when I found this information about agent skills, because it's becoming an open standard. We already talked about the tools, the agent themselves, or the CLI or the Copilot. They're named different, but they kind of do. They have an instructions file, so that's kind of similar, though they might call it something different. So we've got some general concepts, even though the specific implementation per provider is slightly different, right? But with agent skills, it's becoming an open standard. It started off with Anthropic, and so it was very specific to Claude Code, but it's becoming implemented across these, developer agents or whatever, as well. What's a little bit different about this is that it's not always in context. It depends on what you typed in as the user prompt to determine if one of these agent skills is going to be used. And then, only then, when it's identified as being something that's going to be used, is the instructions and information for that skill included in the context to be passed to the LLM. And there's additional things that can be included. So just wanted to jump in. So if you go to agentskills.io, just gives you a little bit of an overview as which we talked about. It talks about skill authors, why you'd want to create them. That's for compatibility across agents now, because it's no longer just Claude Code for that.
Well, I think what's remarkable there is that's acknowledging the fact that they all work essentially the same way.
Yeah, yeah.
They're all doing essentially the same thing.
The model's different, and kind of some of the
Some of the details are a little different, but
yeah,
they're
but
fundamentally the same. Yeah.
generally they're about the same. So it does talk about adoption, who's all using it, but so this is a growing list. So if we jump into what are skills, I'm jumping to this page because in the end, what you have to do is in order, like if I'm in Visual Studio Code and I've got Copilot Studio in my panel off onto the right hand side, and I want to enter something in order for this agent skill to be found, it needs to exist in a folder in that project. Generally, there's an exception to that. And in order to do that, there is some very specific structure. So the name of your skill, and it has to have a skill.md file underneath it. That's the only required file. And then it could also have scripts directory, which is exactly what you think it is. You could run bash scripts, you can, whatever, Python, you can, JavaScript, you can run code or have the skill MD code reference scripts to call in certain situations. Do you have a question?
Maybe. I mean, it feels to me like there's the scripts directory. Okay, that's interesting in some ways. But what I feel like, I guess, is kind of missing here is the MCP server. Because I feel like when I was reading something in Gemini that they were calling extensions, which sounded a lot like skills when I first heard about it, extensions were kind of built on top of MCP servers. So I I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
not sure I'm not sure there's a question there. It's more, wait a minute, weren't MCP servers going to be solving all of these problems, and now why don't we have that?
and I think it could. I think there are some, parallel technologies that do some of the similar things. So in the end, when you're typing something in to the prompt, there's various different ways for it to answer the question that you have. And it can draw on this instructions file. It can draw on a specific agent skill. It can call an MCP server. Like I do this all the time when I'm typing in questions that have to do with Azure. There's an Azure documentation MCP server, and it goes out and it gives me, instead of just generally going out on the internet or wherever it decides to look, it's going to something that would be considered a better authority on Azure, assumedly, is the documentation. So that MCP server is a way to do that. So yes, I MCP server is definitely a way that you can get information that help with this. Agent skills is another way that you can do that. And I guess maybe it depends on if something needs to happen locally. Like if I think about it, if there's something repetitive that I want to do in the terminal of my IDE that does something, and I want to have AI help me with that, then I think that's where agent skills would be, because it can call a local file which could do various different things.
We were saying the same thing about MCP servers.
Um,
I don't want to
yeah,
drag us.
yeah.
I don't want to.
No. Yeah, I can see, because there is the local tools versus the server
Right.
based MCP server. So yeah, I can see
And
that.
I don't want to. I don't want to drag this
Yeah,
conversation down into this, but I guess I want to use this as a point to help say things are changing really fast. There's a lot of competing standards, and we don't have a real standard for this yet. For this
yeah.
concept of how we safely extend our agents.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like, well, is this something that I want to host, or is this something that I just want to have local, right? So
So I just want to kind of drop in here for a second. After we finished recording, I was browsing around, and on Richard Seroter's Daily Reads page, he linked to this article called MCP Skills and Agents. And I feel like it answers the question that I just asked about what's the difference between a skill and an MCP, and why shouldn't these be fitting together better? Um, so we'll include a link to the article, but I kind of want to run through it, where he talks about, he kind of emphasizes the fact that skills are reusable prompts. And that's kind of the big deal about them, is that they are including these additional instructions. He then also points out, that we have these tools in MCP in general, and exactly how those work. He has this line: MCP is an over-engineered protocol that does a lot of things that no one uses. Accurate enough. Um, he does talk about how MCP is a little bit more secure than we originally thought, uh, but also that there's a lot of bad MCPs out there. And then he finally raises the right point that, increasingly we're now also talking about agents in these things. And that's something we didn't even touch on. How agents and subagents have their pros and cons as well. I think, though, the key point that he makes here kind of is this: you're looking at the definitions and thinking these look pretty similar, and you'd be right, and that was exactly what we talked about.
I,
um basically they're a way to give this more capabilities, and the only real difference is kind of how they do it. Whether they front load that list of tools or not, and we'll be talking about that some more.
Yeah, and one of the, I guess, best ways to better understand this is just go and use some MCP servers, use some skills, create your own skills, just kind of get in there and figure out what it's all about. So then you have some foundation that you can build on and say, oh, this would be a situation where I'm using it that I might do MCP, or this is a situation where I might create an agent skill.
And that's one of the things he talks about at the end is, none of these are silver bullets. We're still working on that, finding the best solutions to things. Anyway, read the article, and now let's get back to what you and I were just talking about. Right. Anyway, I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry.
No, that's yeah, it's good because we're kind of exploring it. So one of the things I want to talk about is and how these skills work is progressive disclosure. So at startup, the agents load, find these skills, and all of them have a skill.md file. That's why it's required. And that skill.md file has what's called front matter, so a name and a description. So at startup, agents load only the name and description, so that front matter, and then it's kind of like a registry of these are the different skills, just kind of like any other tool. You use the name and the description of the tool to say these are the things that I can do, and so that just kind of sits there until you type something into a prompt.
I kind of want to step back one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to be clear, the first thing that you need to do is actually install a skill. So this discovery is only taking place once a skill is installed.
Yes, so it's gonna look in your project and it's gonna look for folders.
Right.
If there are no folders, there are no skills. There's nothing to register. But if you have a certain folder structure and that has this skill
Defined in
singular
it.
MD file, then it can register or identify the list of agent skills that are available locally in
Right.
your
So
IDE.
so when it starts up, it looks at its installed skills and gets the name and description. We'll talk. We'll
Right.
get to installing the skills shortly.
Yes, exactly. So then when you type something in the prompt, then the agent will say, "Oh, this skill could help me." So it uses its reasoning and figures out, okay, this skill is going to help me, and then it goes through at that point in time, it loads the rest of the skill MD file. So like in this case, this is an example about PDF processing. And so, you've just got markdown instructions. It could be as long as you need it to be with detailed instructions of what you want it to do or how you can use it. Now, in that instructions, you can reference things in these other folders, this scripts folder, this references folder, this assets folder. So you can use that inside the skill MD, but it's at that point that it actually loads once it figures out that the skill can help me, and then it actually executes and goes through, and that's becomes part of the context, and so then the LLM uses all that to figure stuff out. All right.
This
Yeah, go ahead.
explanation is interesting. The agent
Yeah.
follows the instructions, optionally loading reference files or executing bundled code as needed. That's basically saying it hands it off to the LLM. The LLM tells it which tool to run, and it runs the tool, right?
Yeah. But the tool could be a bash, a bash script that's in the scripts folder that's,
Okay,
that
fair.
runs
Yeah.
locally, right? So, all right. This was last week that I found this reference about agent skills, and I jumped in and I decided I would. So I opened up my IDE and I created that folder structure that was specific for GitHub Copilot and created my own skill. And I created something very simple. So I decided, well, I want to keep that around and maybe I want to keep a list of those. And so I created a GitHub repo and we'll send a reference to that. But it's my awesome GitHub Copilot, which actually probably should be renamed because these can be used in a bigger context than I thought they could. At first, I wasn't sure if they were GitHub specific, but the more I looked at it, then I realized something different. But if I wanted to jump in, so under the skills folder, there is this directory called list global npm. So that's the name of my skill, my agent skill. If we dive into that, then it's not really doing that much. I was having, kind of a hard time figuring out. Here's the front matter, the name and the description. That name matches the name under, of the folder. And then this is just execute the following command in the terminal, and it's doing. Sometimes I forget what the exact syntax is for listing my global packages, but just the top level ones. So I'm like, okay, let's just do that. So that's bare bones, very simple. That's all it does. So I got it working locally, and then I created this GitHub repository where I'm like, well, maybe I'll have some other skills, and so, but this is the only one that I have right now. So that's kind of as far as I got last week. Any questions up to this point?
Nope. I would say that
Okay.
I think one of the things that I believe Gemini extensions added was the ability to also tie it to a slash command. So, for example, if I wanted to create a command global or npm global, just because I can never remember the actual one, I could, create a command /npm and set that up that it would execute the command or go through these steps.
Yeah, and Copilot, GitHub Copilot has something similar as well, where you can have specific instruction files where the slash command is part of the file name, and so then if you do the slash command, then it finds that file and runs it. So once again, there's another way that you
Yeah.
can do targeted. But I think agent skills are meant to be for things that are a little bit bigger than maybe slash commands. But I don't know. I guess I've seen. I think I've even seen situations where slash commands have called local scripts too. So maybe.
Right. I think what it is that this offers multiple ways to hook into the same set of instructions, I guess is what I think some of the extensions are trying to do.
Okay. All right, so then this week I came across this website called Skills SH, created by Vercel, and I found it kind of interesting. The first thing that you notice on this is it talks about how, with one CLI command of this skills add, you can add an agent skill that exists in a GitHub repo into your project. So this is how you get the skill into your code. Now you could hand code it in there if it was a one-off, and but you needed it over and over again for that project only. Then it maybe doesn't make sense to put it anywhere. But if you wanted to reuse it, then that goes into GitHub. So then, do you copy the code out of GitHub and paste it into your project, or do you use something like this Skills CLI? So that's what we're going to talk about now. Now, there is this idea of a leaderboard, and here's a list of almost 7,000 agent skills that that you can access. So one of the things that you notice is it tells you how many times it's been installed, so how many times somebody has added that from the repo into their local project. But let's talk a little bit about the documentations. This is a CLI written in Node and JavaScript, and so you can do npx, so you don't have to actually install the skills tool or CLI into your global npm, but you can just run it, and then this add means add whatever's after that into your project. Now, the skill name is just going to be, so for example, in this case, my project is RM Tucker phx/awesome GitHub Copilot. That is the name that you would use in this documentation for the skill name. There is an additional command line argument where you can say, this is a specific skill that I want to install. So in this case, I could say the skill is going to be list global npm. So like maybe this repo is a collection of agent skills and I only want to download one of those skills. Then you can do that via the command line as well. Let's open up Visual Studio Code. So this one says the description is list global packages. And so I even gave some kind of hints. If you said list global npm or list g packages, then that's how it's going to know, oh, this skill is something that could be useful to me. So if I go into an empty project here, and over here I try to say list G, it's not going to make any sense. There's nothing over here. So GitHub Copilot is going to do the best that it can to try to figure out what I wanted it to do. It's going to not find, that skill because it doesn't exist. There we go. Yeah, I was going to say it's. So yeah, saying it's thinking it appears to be incomplete. The workspace folder is empty. Did you mean So it doesn't know what you meant. But if I go ahead and run this npx skills add and the repository and the specific skill, then it's going to run the CLI. And then it's going to ask me some questions and we'll go ahead and get this installed. Okay, yes, I want to proceed. So this is the npx pulling down this skills version 1.0.15 of the Skills CLI package. So it found the repository, so it's cloning the repository down, and it's going to find that specific skill. So here we go. So it found the skill. The skill that I was looking for was list global npm. You can also look for agents, which is something different than what we've talked about.
No. That's interesting. Okay, keep going.
So then here's the list of all the different copilots or CLIs that support agent skills. So I can go through and I'm going to say, sure, I'll leave Claude code. Well, here, I'll keep it faster. But I'll keep Gemini CLI, GitHub Copilot, but we're going to get rid of the rest of these here.
But this is really interesting. When I ran this, because I did the same thing, and we'll show this in a minute, it detected the fact that I had Gemini installed and said, you have Gemini installed, let's keep going.
Interesting.
So
I wonder if I would have an instructions file in my project, if it would have found, or like even just the .github folder, if it would have done this. But anyway,
interesting.
So I can install it at the project or the global level. Let's say just go at the project level. Now this is interesting because it's going, and this is the problem with every one of these IDE tools that do this. They put them into a different folder, even though they support agent skills. Then they're going to put the agent skill in a different folder, and so that's why I had to go through a list. And if I want a copy of this across all of them, then I use one copy. I use a symlink so that if I change it in one, it changes it in the others. Or I can copy it, into all the different folders and just have copies of it. So let's try the symlink here. So yes, I want to proceed with the installation, and so it's working. And if you notice over here, it's created a agents folder, and that's kind of it always gets the agents folder, and then depending on which other of these tools it created, here is the .gemini, but here's the list skills, the folder, and the skills skill MD, and here's the GitHub, same type of thing. So if I come back over here and say list G now, it's going to do that progressive discovery where it says, I'm trying to figure this out. And let's see we can see. Oh, yeah, it says that there's this list global npm or list G packages. So it's like, oh, here it is. Would you like to run it? Sure. So I've got one terminal window open here. I say allow. It's going to go ahead and open another one, or at least that's what it did before. Yep, there we go. And then it's going to execute the code and show the outputs. Looks like that failed for some reason. But anyway, that's the gist of it. It found it this time. It called the right thing. And that was an agent skill running in the case of GitHub Copilot.
So just to prove that this is truly multi-platform, let's go take a look at what this looks like using Gemini CLI.
Sounds good.
I'm running in a completely different operating system and almost completely different setup from you.
Yep.
So the first thing we need to do is I need to run npx skills and add it. Now, one of the interesting things here is that the skills app is very generic. It'll install it on all of those agents. Gemini CLI also has its own version of this. So I could do Gemini skill and give it the URL for the GitHub repository, and it would install it as a skill. But we're not going to do that. And I suspect some of the others are also, everybody has their own way to install a skill.
Yep.
But there's also this general way that will install it for a bunch of them. So it cloned the repository, it found the skill, it selected that skill, it detected that I already had an agent, so it's installing to Gemini CLI. Like you, I want it just installed for this project. We'll go with the symlink, and we'll install it. Fantastic. So if we take a look at the directory structure now, again, we've got agents and Gemini. And if we take a look at agents, we have the skills that are in it, the list global npm skill with the skill MD. Fantastic stuff. Now, when I start Gemini, I can ask it what npm packages are installed globally. And it says, hey, I've got a skill that can do that. There is one. Checks the skill. It will use that using the recommended command. Prompts me to know whether I want to use the npm command. I'll allow that one once. It gets the result and tells me what I have installed.
So there we go.
So there we go. One command, two environments, straightforward. And I think that's kind of part of the essential point is that, this now means that, teams of people can all have a common set of stuff. And maybe that's checked in through Git, or maybe we've got a separate, team repository for different skills that are available. But everyone can be working off the same set of tools.
Yeah. At first I thought there was specific, something that was special, I guess, for this skills SH, because if you went there was this list of all these different skills. And you're like, oh, do I have to register my GitHub repository here? Actually, you don't, because what happens is that add command that we executed has telemetry in it, unless you have an environment variable that turns it off, and it just takes the date and the name of your skill, and it keeps track of that. So, and probably, I don't know how often this refreshes, but we've installed it, 2 or 3 different times on a couple different platforms. And so we should be able to, a couple days, come back and check. I don't think it's here yet, but I could search for RM Tucker PHX, since that was the repo that I was using. It said no skills at this time. I did want to jump into some of this other details that this leaderboard gives you just really quick. So like there was something that I was looking up for like Kubernetes. Let's say that I have a project and I want to do something with Kubernetes and I want to create a manifest file. And I'm like, oh, there's this manifest generator. And so I can jump into the detail page of this. And if you were to look at the code behind the scenes, this is the skill MD file. You don't see the front matter, but you do see the rest of the file. And you also see this is the command that you would use to install it. It keeps track of how many weekly installs there were, what the repo is. You could jump into the repo if you wanted to. And it tells you which different profiles
It's
or
interesting.
platforms that it was
Which
installed on.
which agents are using it?
Yeah. And
What
then if
I think is
you,
interesting.
yeah.
So 7 weekly installs, but that totals more than 70 there. So that's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if some of these like in my case, I selected both GitHub Copilot and Gemini CLI, so maybe that
Right,
only
right.
registered as one install. So, but if you look in here, you can see some additional details. Like if I were to search for reference, here is a reference to a file that's in the references folder, and I could get some details with that. There's also files that are in the assets folder. If I were to jump into that link that we had that was taking me to the repository, here is that repository, and here is the actual skill MD file. Here's the front matter and then the rest of the stuff. But if you look at it, there's an assets folder that includes some YAML files and some reference files, which includes some MD, and there could be a scripts, that has some code. So you can jump into some of these and kind of drill into it and start to better understand how other people are using agent skills and how you might create
Oh,
your own.
it's funny you took that angle on it because the angle I was thinking was, certainly for any skill that you install, you want to look at it to say, well, okay, what scripts is it installing? It's telling me that this is a Kubernetes manifest generator. What do the instructions really say? Or does
Yes.
it include stuff that will, automatically install additional stuff in my Kubernetes container that I don't want? So
Yeah, yeah.
I for security, and I'm running this on my machine. What's installed on my machine? When you showed this to me, my first reaction was, this is cool, this is neat, but it has the same problem about registration and discovery that everything else has so far. It doesn't solve the discovery problem, really. It kind of hints around it, but only in the same way that, like, there are a dozen MCP directories that have come up.
Yep.
And all of them, in my mind, have the exact same, and I think Skills.sh has the same problem. There's no dog fooding. It is not clear to me that there is a skill that will help me find skills.
Yeah.
And and to me, that just, if it's not there, that's telling me something about what this is. And what it's telling me is it's not ready for prime time yet.
Yeah, I think it's useful. I think if you have specific instructions that you want to share, then it's better to have it, in a repo someplace that can be shared. But you're still at the point where you need to either tribal knowledge or some onboarding document or starter project template or something that says run this command to install these certain skills and then use that going forward.
And this is kind of my problem with all of these solutions is they're a great step. I think they're an important step. I think they're the first step in addressing this whole, how do we have our agents have a shared understanding between you and me?
Yep.
How do we have our agents get additional competency that they wouldn't necessarily have before? How do we give them additional instructions that, sure, our LLM might be able to reason it out with, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 tokens every time, or in 100 or so tokens plus these scripts that I wrote, can they do it? I think these are
Yeah.
all great and wonderful, but I feel like we're kind of nibbling around the edges still.
Yeah, and it is
And we,
also. Oh, go ahead.
and I guess we're nibbling around the edges, and we keep claiming that this is taking a big bite out of the cookie, and we're not. I don't see it as that big bite yet.
Yeah, it's also surfacing the problem where because there's this race to being first and innovative, and that you know sure this agent skills might be coming out as more of an open standard, but can we agree on just a .ai folder that all these things go into? All the instructions files are named the same way. Skills
Right.
are in the same folder. So it just surfaces that there is this fragmentation that if they're all doing basically the same thing, then you don't have to have 15 different folders that do the same thing.
I think the other thing that this rush to be first keeps doing is it keeps ignoring essential elements. Most importantly, security.
Yeah.
I
It's just enough to be useful, but not fully baked.
right. And I know, for example, they run them in some of these get run in sandboxes, and I'm pretty sure Gemini CLI, for example, you can't go into what they call YOLO mode with a skill. It won't let you. You have to approve every single, command that gets run. I don't know if the other agents do that as well, but so there are security implications, and I'm not sure we know how to address all of them yet, and that worries me.
Yeah.
But you're right. This is a good first small step, but it's only a first small step.
Yeah. No, I definitely, definitely things that need to be addressed and more consistency going forward.
So, anything else we want to cover?
Nope.
Okay. So yeah, this was very cool. Thank you for sharing it, bringing it to everyone's attention. I would love to know how folks out there are using skills. What skills are you using? What skills are you finding important? What skills have you written? And share that with us on social. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And we'll talk about this stuff another time on Two Voice Devs.
Two voice devs. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Mark.